My name is Ava Sinclair, and that night, I wished I was just a pale shadow in the crystal chandeliers, not the focus of a public farce. They called it the biggest social event of the summer, a lavish night at the Glass Mansion, where Chicago's richest and most powerful gathered to celebrate the 27th birthday of Logan Glass, the sole heir of the Glass Capital Group. And me? I was just a waiter, wearing a black and white uniform tied at the waist, holding a champagne tray, and walking carefully as if any mistake would cause the world to collapse. I've been to many parties, but I've never seen anything quite like this. The garden was decorated with pale yellow lights that rippled between the birch trees. A jazz band played on a stage floating in the middle of a lake, and the glasses in the hands of the guests were brighter than the moon. I had learned to be invisible at parties like this. Waiters were not supposed to show emotion, not panic, and certainly not anger. But even when I tried my best to stay inconspicuous, fate had a way of grabbing me by the collar and shoving me right into the spotlight. The pool level needs drinks, the manager's voice boomed through the earpiece. I swallowed, nodded, and turned down the path to the pool area, where trap music thundered through the air. When I arrived, a group of young men and women were gathered by the pool. Metallic dresses, unbuttoned shirts, laughter as if all moral codes had been lifted. And then I saw him, Logan Glass, in an ivory white suit, sitting cross-legged on the sofa, holding a glass of wine as if it was born to be in the palm of his hand. He caught sight of me, and I knew at that moment the silence was over. "Oh, look who it is," he said loudly, his voice thick with drink and contempt. "If it isn't Ava Sinclair, still washing glasses as well as ever?" I gripped the tray tighter, trying to smile politely. "Hello, Mr. Glass. May I offer you a glass of champagne?" He didn't answer right away. He looked me over. No, scrutinized me, from head to toe, as if I were a defective product that had entered a high-end showroom. "Hey guys," he called out, making the group turn. "Who wants a laugh?" Then, without warning, without hesitation, he pushed on my shoulder. I lost my balance. The champagne tray wobbled. The pool tiles slipped under my shoes. I felt everything spin for a split second. Then, yum! The first feeling is cold, numbingly cold, as if the whole lake had become a knife cutting into my flesh. I sank, my ears ringing from the sound of the water. My mouth opened and the taste of chlorine rushed down my throat. When I surfaced, the laughter hit me like a sledgehammer. "Great!" someone shouted. "Can we add some diving?" I pushed my hair out of my face and looked up at the crowd gathered by the lake. No one helped me. No one offered a hand. They laughed. Laughed as if I were part of the entertainment they paid to see. Logan stood there, his glass raised like a king entertaining the masses. "Relax, Cinderella," he said, his voice playful. "It's just water." I crawled out of the pool, my shoes sloshing water. My black and white uniform clung to me like a second skin, revealing every curve in the light. I bent down to pick up the broken glass. It was the only thing I could do to retain the last shred of dignity. Behind me, a voice stabbed my back like a knife. "Look at him, he's soaked to the skin. She should be in the kitchen," another said, sneering. I gritted my teeth. No crying, no begging. Just picked up the pieces of glass like my life depended on it. I used to think the pinnacle of humiliation was when my father left home without saying goodbye. But no, the pinnacle of humiliation is when you are made the laughing stock at the party of the person who pushed you down when you were at your lowest, and still no one stands up for you. But then, a strange silence cut through the laughter. The crowd parted. I looked up and saw him. Nathaniel Crowe. He stood silently at the edge of the crowd. No extraneous movements, no obvious expressions. But his aura was like a cold blade cutting through the air, freezing everything. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice eerily calm, as if he knew the answer, but still wanted to hear the other person bury himself. Logan chuckled dryly, shrugging. It was just a joke, Crow. Don't take it so seriously. Nathaniel's eyes turned to me, who was kneeling with a broken glass in my hand, water dripping from my hair onto the stone floor. This, he said, his voice low, doesn't seem like a joke. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to stay silent, like always, but my mother's voice, Lily's eyes, and the shame boiling inside me all shouted in unison. Enough. No, I said, my voice hoarse but clear. He pushed me. Silence fell like a hammer. Logan froze. Nathaniel said nothing for a few seconds. Then he turned to Logan, his eyes dark as the sky before a storm. You pushed her? It was just a joke, Logan stammered. Everyone was having fun, right? No one answered. The crowd now avoided his eyes. Nathaniel took a step forward. Is insulting a working man your kind of humor? Logan tried to argue, but two men in black appeared as if from the darkness. Nathaniel didn't need any orders. They grabbed Logan's arms and dragged him away as he struggled, shouting, I'm the host, you have no right. Nathaniel replied coldly, This party is mine, and you are no longer invited. I watched Logan being led out the gate like a wet dog that had just bitten its owner. But I didn't feel happy. I just felt empty, like all the blood had been drained from my body, leaving me a hollow shell. Nathaniel turned back to look at me. Are you okay? I nodded, though my hands were still shaking. You don't look well, he said, holding out his hand. Come with me, it's bad enough out here. I looked at his hand, hesitating for a breath. Then I took it. I don't remember exactly how I followed him, only the feeling of the cold stone floor under my feet, the squishing of wet shoes, and the eyes of everyone still stabbing into my back like sharp blades. Crow House was too large to be comfortable. I had catered here a few times, a senator's kid's wedding, a luxury designer's new collection, but I had never been to the quiet corridor behind the main hall, where only important people were allowed. The lights were soft, a warm yellow glow illuminating the abstract paintings on the walls. No one spoke. Nathaniel walked ahead of me, his back straight, his stride long and determined. He didn't ask if I wanted to follow, and I didn't know why. Maybe it was because my legs were shaking. Maybe I needed a place to breathe after all. We stopped at a heavy hand-carved wooden door, which he opened. Inside was a luxurious but minimalist living room, caramel-colored leather armchairs, a crackling fireplace, and a coffee table with neatly stacked magazines. Nothing extraneous, nothing out of place. I don't bite, Nathaniel said softly, his voice slightly amused, for the first time all evening. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so unexpected that it made me relax for a split second. I apologize for what happened, he continued, closing the door behind him. What happened is not a reflection of your worth. It is the corruption of others. I didn't know how to respond. Water was still dripping from my hair onto my shoulders, cold. I stood there like a thief, caught in a world that didn't belong to me. He walked over to the crystal liquor cabinet and poured a glass of amber liquid. I took a half step back and shook my head. I don't drink. It's apple juice, he said, holding out the glass to me. I know exactly what kind of alcohol you need, and what kind of alcohol will only make you feel worse. I took it. The glass was warm in my hand, the faint scent of apples reassuring. I sat down on the armchair, feeling the softness envelop my trembling body. Nathaniel sat across from me, tilting his head to observe me. Your name is Ava Sinclair, right? I nodded. How do you know? I checked the party planning company's personnel list. I didn't want anyone to get dragged into the mud without anyone seeing that it was wrong. I took a sip of the juice. It was sweet, smooth, and almost made my throat constrict. I suppose, I said. You don't put all the humiliated people in your house in your private sitting room? He chuckled. Number. But it's not the first time I've seen someone try to get back up with their dignity intact after being knocked down. I put down my glass, my hands clasped in my lap. I don't want to be a laughingstock. You weren't a laughingstock, Nathaniel said more seriously. You were made a laughingstock and came out of it a warrior. I clenched my fists. I don't feel like a warrior at all. No one feels that way when they're bleeding. He leaned back in his chair. So, why do you put up with this job? Why do you accept bowing your head in places like this? I was silent for a few seconds, not because I didn't have an answer, but because there were so many, I didn't know where to start. Because my mother is paralyzed, I said finally. Work accident. Insurance doesn't cover it. And my sister Lily is in high school. I'm the only one who makes money in the house. Nathaniel's face relaxed, but there was no pity. Just silence, as if he were rearranging a painting he had just seen. I've done it all, I continued. Coffee shops, hotel rooms, babysitting, and now holding a bar tray. I thought I was used to it, until I got pushed into the water while they laughed. I understand, he said, his voice low. I saw my mother pushed off a board seat by people who thought she was too emotional to run the finances. I saw her cry, but she got up, and I learned not to tolerate contempt under champagne. I looked at him, a little surprised. Nathaniel Crowe, the famous investor, once called the iron brain of Wall Street, was talking to me as if he understood life underwater. It was both comforting and disconcerting. So, what do you want from me? I asked directly. Nothing, he shrugged. Other than giving you a chance. He opened the drawer under the coffee table and took out a file folder. I looked at it like I was looking at a strange object. What is this? A position at my organization, the Crowe Foundation. We just created a new division that coordinates programs to support young workers in urban areas. You have perseverance, a sense of reality, and most importantly, resilience. I sat still, my mind spinning. The title isn't fancy, he continued, but the income is steady. There's health insurance, tuition assistance if you want to continue your studies, and you'll never have to hold a drink again, unless it's a celebratory drink in your name. I laughed, a lopsided, almost bitter laugh. You usually give jobs to people you just saw fall into a lake? Only when that person stands up without losing a drop of dignity. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. This opportunity sounded too perfect, and I'd lived long enough to know that perfect things often come with strings attached. So, what are the conditions? I asked. Nathaniel smiled vaguely. Accept it. Believe that you are worthy, and use it to change not just your life, but the lives of others like you. I bit my lip. I thought of my mother, of Lily, of the sleepless nights I spent doing insurance paperwork, of my hands chapped from washing dishes in cold water in the winter. I don't believe in fairy tales, but I do believe in opportunity when it comes. Give me a few days, I said. I need to think about it. Nathaniel stood up and held out his hand. Of course, but opportunities like this, no knocking twice. I squeezed his hand, firm, warm, firm. When I left the room, my uniform was still wet, my hair still stuck to my cheeks, but inside me was something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. 2 days after that fateful evening at the Crowe Mansion, I received an email. From Crowe Foundation Recruitment Topic. Welcome Ava Sinclair to the Urban Impact Initiative. I read it no less than 20 times. Each time I thought it was a joke, a mistake, or even some high-tech trick to test my gullibility. But no, everything was correct. My name, my email address, my social security number, and that final solemn line. First work report, Monday, 8 a.m., 42nd floor, Crowe Tower. I laughed when I read that line. Floor 42. A week ago, I was standing in the basement of the Marriott mixing cocktails for drunken businessmen, and now I was called to the top floor of a glass tower overlooking Lake Michigan. The world sure knows how to tease. On Monday morning, I arrived almost an hour early, partly because I was nervous, partly because I couldn't believe that the elevator in a building this tall wouldn't sense my presence. and refused to operate. I wore a crisp white shirt, gray pants, and an old coat my mother had left me. I didn't have a leather bag or shiny heels, but I had something I'd never had before, a reason to walk with my back straight. The receptionist greeted me with a stereotypical smile. Not bright, not cold. I gave my name, and within seconds I was handed a temporary employee badge and directed to the 42nd floor conference room. I was not prepared for what awaited. The 42nd floor is another world. Polished walnut floors, glass walls overlooking the city glowing in the morning sun. Everyone here is dressed like they stepped out of a lookbook. Nude blazers, tight pencil skirts, hair pulled back into tight buns. And then, I walked in. Wavy hair, white shirt ironed but not new, slightly worn loafers. The room seemed to freeze for a moment. The first to speak was a platinum blonde woman with a sharp face. Her name was Chelsea Northside Regional Coordinator. "Oh," she said, her voice drawling. "You're the pool girl?" I stiffened. A few small laughs escaped from the end of the table. "Nathaniel is not here." I pursed my lips and nodded. "My name is Ava Sinclair." "Yes," Chelsea continued. "I heard you were recruited. By special means." I know what she is implying. Boss's acquaintance, the one who did not pass the interview. Lucky pool doll. And the looks in the eyes of the rest of the room confirmed it. The meeting began, but I could hear nothing but the pounding of blood in my ears. I took notes. I observed quietly. And I knew, if I wanted to survive here, I couldn't just do well. I had to be twice as good, triple. My job was to be the assistant coordinator for a redevelopment project in South Lawndale, an area that had one of the highest unemployment rates in Chicago. We worked with the government, local businesses, and community groups to rebuild a youth center and vocational training classes. Sounds noble. But the reality? It's emails that go unreturned. It's files that get lost. It's meetings that people forget to invite you to. It's Chelsea sending me an 11 o'clock meeting schedule when the rest of the team is meeting at 10 o'clock, then smiling and saying, "Oh, maybe the system is wrong." I didn't argue. I documented every time I was left out. I learned quickly. I learned internal systems, read old reports, and analyzed budgets. I stayed until 9 p.m., using temporary access to data I shouldn't have. I didn't break the rules. I just stayed ahead of them, and I discovered something unusual. A contractor named Lindell Solutions was appointed to renovate the South Lawndale Community Center, but they received nearly $200,000 and the project still hasn't started. No bills for materials, no progress reports. I checked further and found out the company is related to a cousin of Chelsea. I wasn't surprised. I was just amused. It turns out the filth wasn't just at the pool party. It was in the Excel spreadsheets too. I was going to submit the report directly to senior management, but I hesitated. Nathaniel had told me in the first email, "Be careful when touching the power structure. It reacts like a wounded animal." I decided to gather more evidence. I called Lindell Solutions, pretending to be an office worker at a local charity. They dodged, beat around the bush, and promised to call back. But I recorded every call. I noted the phone number and located the headquarters, just a rented mailbox. I had all the pieces of the puzzle. And then I received an invitation to meet from the very Nathaniel Crow. He called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. His room was on the west side of the tower, with a glass wall that looked out over Lake Michigan. No photos, no trophies, just a thick stack of documents and a cold cup of coffee. "Sit down," he said, pointing to the chair opposite. I was silent and put the file on the table. "Lindell Solutions," I said. "It's a shell company. It's directly linked to Chelsea Renault. I have proof." He took the file and turned the pages. He said nothing for 10 minutes. Finally, he looked up. "How long have you been doing this?" 4 nights, I replied. "And 2 weekends. You know what will happen if I handle this badly?" She will make me a saboteur, he nodded. And if I ignore it? I will make you an accomplice. There was a tense silence. Then he smiled. A rare smile, imperfect but real. Good. Let's see where this goes. That evening, I received an anonymous email from an internal address. Be careful. You're playing with fire. And don't think Crow will always cover for you. I don't know who sent it. Maybe it was Chelsea. Maybe it was someone else in the group. But for the first time, I wasn't scared. I felt your path. I am no longer at the bottom of the lake. Now I am learning how to swim in a shark tank. A week after I filed my lawsuit against Lindell Solutions, I walked into the office feeling like I had hundreds of eyes on my back. The office was unusually quiet that day. No murmurs of conversation, no rapid tapping of keyboards, just a thick, foggy atmosphere. I walked across the common area, put down my bag, and received a message from the intercom. Hudson Conference Room, 9 a.m., attendance required, Ava Sinclair. I swallowed. The words were as cold as a summons. No further explanation, no signature. No one greeted me that morning. I guess they knew. The Hudson Conference Room was at the end of the 42nd floor hallway, a frosted glass door with a gold nameplate and an unnervingly cold white light. When I walked in, 3 people were already seated: Chelsea, 2 in-house lawyers, and Logan Glass. I stopped. Logan sat like he belonged in the room. A crisp gray suit, navy tie, slicked back hair, and a smirk as if he hadn't been escorted out of a pool party just a few weeks ago. "Oh, look who it is," he said, his voice slurring. "The pool girl. Long time no see." I didn't answer. I sat down, keeping my back straight. Chelsea tapped her pen on the table, cold as ice. "We have reviewed your complaint, Ava," she began, her tone all PR. "But during our review, we also discovered some non-compliance with our internal data access procedures." I narrowed my eyes. I only accessed documents related to the South Lawndale project, the part I was assigned to coordinate. Chelsea flipped through a printout. "The data you accessed includes budget expenditures outside your direct control." I chuckled. "So when I discovered a shell company embezzling nearly $200,000 from the organization, the problem was access to mine." Logan interrupted. "You should be careful with your language, Ava. Defamation is a crime." I looked him straight in the eye. "Do you remember the pool?" He laughed. "I remember. But there's no evidence against me. The video? Gone. And no one at the party will testify against you." Chelsea crossed her arms. "I suggest we get back to the point. Ava, if you cannot prove Lindell Solutions' direct involvement in any intentional wrongdoing, you will have to withdraw your report and accept a 2-week internal suspension." I was silent for a few seconds. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the call recording between me and the Lindell Solutions representative. No, you can't ask about that cost. We're just following orders. Depositor. Sender's name? Chelsea Renault's cousin, Mr. Paul Renault." I looked at Chelsea. She paled. Logan sighed as if I had ruined a game he had invested so much in. "This recording," I said, "has been backed up to 3 independent storage platforms, and 1 copy has been sent to the ethics department." Chelsea clenched her jaw. "Who do you think you are?" "I am the one you thought was invisible," I replied, my voice calm. "And I was very good at being invisible. But now I am visible." The in-house lawyer sitting next to Chelsea spoke up. "We'll need some time to consider it. Ava, you can leave the meeting room." I stood up, my heart pounding, but I didn't shake. As I walked out of the room, I felt Logan's eyes burning into my back. I didn't turn around. I knew he wouldn't let me go. That afternoon, I received a text message from Nathaniel Crow. "Meet me at the conference room on the 44th floor, 6 p.m. I have never been to the 44th floor. That is the high-level executive area, where only senior management and strategic partners are allowed to go. I don't know if this is a compliment or The end. When I walked in, Nathaniel was standing with his back to me, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city through the glass wall. "I heard you had a pleasant morning," he said, without turning around. I swallowed. "If you're going to fire me, at least tell me the exact reason." He turned back, eyebrows raised. "You think I called you up here to fire you? I think I'm shaking up some seats of power. And that's what we need." I froze. "What?" Nathaniel walked over to the conference table and placed a black file in front of me. "We've suspected money laundering through contractors since last year, but no one has penetrated deep enough. You just unlocked the whole system." I looked at the file. Inside was a list of dozens of red-flagged contractors, most of them longtime partners, managed by Chelsea itself. "I need you to go ahead," Nathaniel said. "I'm going to formally assign you to internal affairs, under strict confidentiality. And I need you to pretend you failed." I took a half step back. "Are you kidding?" "Logan won't stop," he said, his eyes hardening. "He's looking to get back into power by buying off the Crow Foundation board. He needs an inside man, and Chelsea is the one." I feel like I just had a bucket of ice water thrown over me. "So, I'm bait?" "You are a knife in a silken veil," Nathaniel replied. "You dare to say what no one else dares to say. You are not a victim. You are the naked truth. And because of that, they will try to destroy you. We will let them believe they will succeed." I was silent for a long moment. "And if I fail?" "Then I will be the first to fall after you." I looked at him, for the first time seeing in this powerful man's eyes not coldness, but responsibility. I nodded. "Okay, we play their game, but by my rules." Nathaniel nodded. "Good. I won't block you, but I won't protect you either. You need to learn to do that for yourself." I chuckled. I learned, ever since I got pushed into the lake. The next day, I emailed Chelsea. "I apologize for overstepping my authority. I will withdraw the report and accept the suspension. Thanks for not pushing me further." An hour later, I received an email reply. "I hope this is a lesson to you. Next time, don't dream of climbing so high." I turned off the screen. No one would know I had played the victim to hide the fact that I was tracing the monster's veins. And this time, I won't just stand up. I will pull them down with you if necessary. I don't remember how long it's been since I had a full night's sleep. Since I officially became the blade in the silk, as Nathaniel called it. I lived two lives. By day as a disciplined employee, keeping my head down and pretending to be reasonable, and by night as the one who flipped through files, recorded internal calls, and tracked suspicious transfers. And then, Tuesday morning, while I was checking the data from the contractor Briggs and Wyatt, my personal phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I had learned to be suspicious of everything. But when I heard the other end say, "Ava Sinclair? We're calling from the emergency room at Mercy General," I was speechless. I arrived at the hospital with only my coat over my shoulders, my arms bare and my mind blank. My mother, Marion Sinclair, had been admitted to the ICU because her blood pressure had spiked, leading to heart complications. She had been paralyzed for 4 years, but never to this extent. They said she needed interventional cardiology surgery, cost over $27,000, insurance covers a third. My younger sister, Lily, was waiting in the hallway, eyes red behind glasses. "Sister," she whispered, "I'm going to quit school. I can go work at Siobhan's, the nail salon. The pay isn't bad. Mom needs you, but you need me too." I held her, smelling the cheap soap in her hair. A 17-year-old girl, in the middle of her senior year of high school, should be thinking about prom, about college, about the future. Instead, she was thinking about sitting 10 hours a day, painting the nails of people who couldn't even remember her name. I shook my head. I'm not skipping school." "But, Lily," I looked her straight in the eye, "we've been through enough. You're going to graduate, go to college. You're not going to live my life again. It burst into tears. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I wasn't allowed to be weak. Then I took out my bank card and transferred money to pay part of the hospital bill in advance. That was it, all savings from 3 years of part-time work, plus my first Crow Foundation salary grant that I had just received. I didn't even think twice. Money can be earned back. Mothers cannot. That night, I returned to my apartment and sat down at my desk with my laptop on low. I pulled up a list of contractors in the Southside area where Chelsea had worked as a supervisor before moving to the central office. One name caught my attention. Pinnacle Outreach LLC. The company received nearly $850,000 from last year's Opportunity for All program, but there was no physical address. I followed the registration number and found out that the executive director was a junior paralegal who worked for Logan Glass 3 years ago. One more thing, a contribution from Pinnacle Outreach valued $10,000 was transferred to a charity founded by Chelsea's mother. I began to see the structure of a whole spider web, a chain of shell companies. Money flows through personal accounts, shell organizations, and then back to people like Logan and Chelsea under the guise of legitimacy. I saved everything, then closed my laptop, not because I was tired, but because I am angry. Angry that while I had to sell my future to keep my mother alive, the rich were still siphoning every penny from the budget meant for people like me, like Lily, like the entire poor neighborhood of South Lawndale. I don't need revenge, I need justice. The next day, when I got to the office, Chelsea was standing next to my desk, files in hand, eyes cold as ice. "Good morning, Ava," she said, suspiciously sweet. "I heard your mother was hospitalized. My condolences." I nodded, saying nothing. "You must be tired. But I have a proposal. I have a temporary position in the Suburban Project Representative Office. Low pressure, easy going. You can do it until you get over the rough patch." I see the point. She's trying to push me away, out of center, out of reach, out of access to documents. A nice way to isolate myself. "Thanks," I said, "but I don't need your pity." Chelsea smiled, not reaching her eyes. "Not pity, a warning." I looked straight at her. "I'll stay until everything is clear." "So you choose war," she whispered, and walked away. That night, Lily texted, "Mom just woke up, asked about you, said she missed your singing voice." I burst into tears. I couldn't hold it in any longer, and I sang. Not in the hospital, not in my dream, but in my small apartment, facing the laptop screen that projected a map of ghost companies. I sang as if my mother were listening, as if each word could heal the crack in her heart and in my own. On Friday morning, I received a package in the mail. There was no name on the sender. Inside is a set of color-printed photos. It contains pictures of me carrying my mother into the hospital, picture of Lily crying in the hallway, and a handwritten note. "How much more do you have to lose?" I stiffened, not because of fear, but because I knew this game had gone to another level. They didn't just want me leave. They want me shut up. I sent that photo to Nathaniel with a note. "If I have an accident, use what I find." He called back immediately. His voice was hoarse. "Ava, you can stop. You don't owe the world anything." I replied, gently but firmly, "I don't owe the world, but I owe my mother a life where she doesn't have to see her daughter buried in poverty." He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Then I will light a fire." That evening, I made an appointment to meet a former Chelsea accountant, currently working for a small nonprofit organization. She was forced to quit when she discovered unreasonable expenses. I recorded her, got copies of her tax records, and got an old work email password of Chelsea. I accessed it successfully, and in the inbox is what I need: a draft contract between Pinnacle Outreach and a strategic investor, with a handwritten note, Logan G. I stared at the screen. Now they are not just cheating, they are guilty. And I was ready. If there's one thing I've learned over the past 3 months, it's this: justice is never given, It must be earned, and I'm about to take it, on the very stage they set up to flaunt their false kindness. The following week, the Crow Foundation hosted City Impact Gala, an annual event that celebrates outstanding community projects in Chicago. The media will be there, sponsors will show up, and of course, social heroes like Chelsea Renault will stand on stage, hoisting trophies and spouting platitudes about justice. I thought about sending all the evidence to the press or to the Internal Ethics Board, but no, they humiliate me in public. Now I will expose them to the public. My plan required time, precision, and a little bit of crazy courage. I met Nathaniel at a small riverside cafe on Monday evening, under the guise of a progress update. I told him my plan. He looked at me for a long time after I finished speaking, then just said one sentence. I'm going to set fire to the tent people are living in. Good, I said. They drowned me once. Now it's time for me to drown them back, but with the truth. Are you sure? He tilted his head. You stand to lose a lot. Maybe your job. I replied with a sarcastic smile. I have never been given anything to call have, so there is nothing to lose. Nathaniel picked up his coffee cup, clinking it against the rim of mine. Then, here's to the fight. That morning, I stood in front of the mirror, wearing the simple black dress Nathaniel had left for me as a silent endorsement. I let my hair down and put on red lipstick, not to stand out, but to no more run away. I walked into the Hilton Grand Ballroom, where the gala was being held, under the scrutiny of hundreds of people. Chelsea stood near the stage, radiant in a silver metallic gown, surrounded by reporters and partners. Logan was there too, standing near the VIP area, hands loosely in his pockets, his eyes still holding the same contempt. When he saw me, he stopped. I looked at him, smiling slightly. Hello, you who thought you won. The event went exactly as I had expected. Speeches, awards, applause. Chelsea was named Community Leader of the Year, a title that was flamboyant, hollow, and bitter. She took the stage and spoke about compassion, about a vision for community service, about the unseen, the unheard, the unelected. I feel sick to hear it. And then the fateful moment arrived. Nathaniel stepped up to the podium to close the program on behalf of the Crow Foundation. He began with a familiar thank you. Then he paused. Tonight, he said, his voice deep but ringing like a bell, we want to honor not just those on stage. We want to listen to those who have been pushed out of the spotlight. The whole room was excited. And that is why, he continued, I invited a special person to the stage. A former waiter who was humiliated in front of everyone. A person who chose to respond not with hatred, but with action. Please, Ava Sinclair. No one applauded. I walked onto the stage in absolute silence. I stood there, where my name should never have been. The light was on my face, my throat was dry, my hand was clutching the USB in my skirt pocket. My name is Ava Sinclair, I began. I was pushed into a pool at a party where wealth was more important than human dignity. I saw Chelsea frown. Logan squeezed her hand. I used to be silent, patient. I worked hard, washed glasses, kept a tray of drinks, told myself I wasn't allowed to speak. I stopped, pulling out the USB. Nathaniel stepped forward and plugged it into the projector. The screen behind me lit up. There, the evidence. The fake Pinnacle outreach contract, the wire transfer to Chelsea's mom, the Logan recording, internal correspondence, emails from Lindell, the Shell account list, everything. I turned back to the microphone. Chelsea Renault, Logan Glass, you stole not just money, but hope and opportunity from people who needed every dollar to survive. My mother almost died because she couldn't afford heart surgery, and you used public funds to fund your party. The auditorium was in chaos. The reporter stood up. Chelsea stammered something, but the microphone wouldn't open for her. Logan charged toward the stage, but was held back by security. And me? I stood still. You want to know who I am? I said. I am the voice of the drowned, and I will not be silent any longer. The news broke overnight. Insiders expose Crow Foundation corruption network at Gala. Shocking evidence exposes Logan Glass and Chelsea Renault. Ava Sinclair, from humiliated waitress to whistleblower. I get hundreds of messages, emails, and interview requests. I turn them all down. I don't do this for fame. I do it because I know silence is complicity. Chelsea was suspended, then resigned. Logan was placed under formal investigation by the state attorney general. The Crow Foundation ordered a full review of its finances. And me? I was offered the position of interim ethics chief, an offer I turned down. I don't want to be a law keeper. I want to rewrite the law. Nathaniel met me in his office the next day. He didn't say anything, just handed me an envelope. Inside was a new contract, open budgets, the ability to build teams, and a program called the Sinclair Initiative, aimed at protecting lower-level employees from internal abuses. I looked at him. You have become the light yourself, he said. Now use it to light the way for others. I said nothing. I just signed. I used to think that when I exposed the truth, the world would applaud. I used to believe that if I was brave enough, right enough, clean enough, justice would prevail, and people would see it. But then I learned this. The truth can make people respect, but it can also make them afraid. And fear breeds anger. 3 days after the gala event, I became a social media phenomenon. People call me Pool Girl exposes the power. To be voice of the forgotten class. To be Cinderella in black. And there are names I don't want to repeat. High climber, political whore, acting snake. Every time I open my phone, I see dozens of messages from strangers, some congratulating me, some wanting to interview me, some asking for original documents, and there are also many people threat. Who do you think you are? Well done, but no one can save you forever. I know where your mother is being treated. Be careful. Justice is not free. You will pay. I passed all the information to Nathaniel and the Internal Security Department, but he just said, "We will protect you to the best of our ability." That sentence, though sincere, did not reassure me. The truth is, behind the stage lights, I began to see I am isolated. Many of my colleagues avoided me. The lunchroom fell silent when I walked in. Some people uninvited me from team meetings, and others responded to emails with one-sentence replies. I understand. They're scared. Not me, but of being seen. Because if I can expose Chelsea, who's to say I won't do the same to them? Even those who used to be on my side have now become cautious. One Thursday afternoon, I happened to meet Monica, the project assistant who had helped me find the Lindell file. She avoided my gaze and said quickly, "I was called to HR for sending you the data. I have an old mother, Ava. I can't be as reckless as you." I nodded, no blame. I'm just sad. The truth is losing the person standing next to, while the enemy quietly rebuilt the wall. Logan hired a big-time legal team and filed a countersuit against the Crow Foundation for slander. He claimed he was defamed, that the recording was edited. Chelsea remained silent, but she was rumored to be preparing a media counterattack. And me? I still had to go to work every morning, reporting progress to my newly assigned team. Strangers, wary, and full of unspoken questions. But then, one quiet evening, as I was sorting through documents in my office, Lily called. Her voice was hoarse but eager. "Sister, Mom can speak again." I choked. "Really? Listen to it." Then I gave the phone to my mother. From the other end of the line, a weak voice said, "Ava, you don't need to apologize. I'm proud of you." I burst into tears. Tears fell onto the desk. Quietly, not loudly, like when I was pushed into the lake, or when I was on stage. This time it was tears of recovery. I don't need the whole world on my side, as long as Mom and Lily don't leave. The next morning, I arrived at Crow Tower earlier than usual. I stood in front of the glass doors on the 42nd floor, watching the city slowly light up in the sunlight. Nathaniel walked over to me, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Slept well," I replied. But I woke up feeling like the most scrutinized person in the office, so I came early to avoid running into them. He was silent for a moment, then said, "They are jealous, and they are afraid. You don't fit into their familiar game. You remind them that the truth is valuable, and that is the scariest thing of all." I turned to look at him. "I'm tired, but I'm not stopping yet. And you shouldn't." He handed me a proposal. "Here's the new program you'll be running. The second corridor. Support for low-level employees reporting misconduct. You name it. You decide what it's about." I opened the proposal, reading it line by line. Initial funding, $2 million. Test scope, 4 cities, legal partner, signed. I looked at him, almost in disbelief. "Your work is not a moment," he said. "It's a journey. And now, you need to lead the way for others." I nodded. "And if they hate me for it, then you need to continue." He smiled slightly. "I can stand the stares from the board, but I can't stand seeing you lose your light." That night, I wrote my first speech for the second corridor program. I recounted the pool incident, not as a humiliating moment, but as a word of caution. I talk about Chelsea, about Logan, about fear, about loneliness, about broken trust. And then I end with a sentence. We don't have to be special to change something. We just have to not look away when we see something wrong. I posted the speech on the internal system, publicly for all employees to read. The next morning, I received my first email from someone I didn't know. "I never dared to speak, but your speech made me want to try. I am a receptionist, and my boss has been forcing me to work unpaid overtime for the past 2 years. I will write a report. Thank you for stepping forward." And then came the second email, the third, the 10th. Like the water that had once drowned me, now began to rise from within the system. But this time, it doesn't drag me down. It lifts me up. I never thought that one day I would have to sit in a meeting with representatives from Illinois State Ethics Commission, the Inspection Department of Labor, and both investigative reporters from Chicago Tribune, just to talk about an initiative built by myself. But that's what happened on Tuesday morning, on the 45th floor of Crow Tower, a floor previously reserved for strategic executives and speakers at global conferences. And me? I've never been allowed through the main entrance of this building without a thorough badge check. Now I am Human Policymaking Program. The second corridor, the symbolic name, is designed to protect low-level employees and whistleblowers within organizations from retaliation, isolation, and silencing. I work with legal teams to ensure legality, nonprofits to provide independent oversight, and donors to maintain financial transparency. I found myself stepping out of the shadow of celebrity victim. But as I went deeper, I began to feel a different kind of pressure, the weight of power. One day, Daniel, a high school friend, and former clerk at a suburban Crow Foundation branch, came to see me. We hadn't spoken much since the gala, but he'd been one of the few people to defend me from the beginning. He looked different, thinner, his eyes more wary. "Ava," he said, "do you know the name Thomas Phelan?" I nodded. West Haven Center supervisor, involved in a few internal complaints. "He fired me," Daniel said, his voice choking, "because I refused to fake my hours for a group of volunteers who were actually unpaid laborers." I blinked. "Do you have proof?" Daniel pushed a file toward me, copies of emails, work logs, and security camera screenshots. I looked it over. It all looked real, enough to incriminate Phelan. But when I asked, "Are you willing to sign it and make it public?" Daniel was silent. "I want, but I need more. I want him fired, lost benefits, humiliated like he did to me. I want Crow to give me back my honor." I looked at him for a long time. In him was the anger I had seen in myself. Angry, hurt, and thirst for revenge. I'll look into it, I said. But this program isn't about knocking anyone out. It's about the wrong thing. Daniel smiled bitterly. So you choose morality over me? I did not reply. He left the office with a look of disappointment that I did not know how to soothe. Daniel's story kept me up at night. I began to wonder, is my program really being used for its intended purpose? Or just a new tool for those who know how to manipulate? A week later, I received an anonymous report denounced a project supervisor. But when I investigated further, I discovered that the denunciation was staged to force the other person give up promotion. I decided, suspend the program for complaints that do not meet the initial verification criteria. The very next morning, Twitter exploded. Ava Sinclair personally covered the victim's mouth. She only protects the person she likes. The second corridor is a back door prepared for the wise. I see initial support began to split. Nathaniel came to see me that afternoon. We sat in his office, the pale yellow light of dusk filtering through the glass walls. You're doing the right thing, he said, his voice even. Hurt doesn't give you the right to hurt back. Justice is not a weapon, it's a fence. I leaned back in my chair. I'm not afraid of being hated. I'm afraid of becoming the thing I fought against. He nodded. And that's why you'll never be it. That evening, I received a handwritten letter, addressed to my home without a postmark. Someone had personally put it in the mailbox. Don't shine your light on the wrong people. If you extinguish the wrong people, they will extinguish you. I held the letter, my hand shaking slightly. I had been through worse threats, but this time it comes from within the system, from someone who once looked up to me as an icon. I stepped out onto the balcony, the night air chilly. From where I stood, I could see Chicago glistening like an electric circuit, tangled, beautiful, and dangerous. I remember the night I was pushed into the lake. I remember the cold, the pain, the laughter. And I think, maybe if I stood up that day but didn't say anything, I would have lived more peacefully. But then I knew, that is not living, it's living in silence. And I've been living like that for too long. 3 days later, I called an emergency meeting. In front of the entire staff of the Corridor Monday program, I said, we have done what no one else has dared to do. But we can also make mistakes. We cannot be a mouthpiece for those who seek revenge, nor a shield for those who escape punishment. We must be the eyes. And the mirror. I announced the set internal code of ethics, co-built by me and a team of lawyers, with a 3-step verification system, transparent feedback mechanisms, and an independent external oversight board from the Crow Foundation. No one applauded, but no one left. And I know that was the real beginning. A month later, I returned to South Lawndale, the site of my first project. The new community center was open. Children were painting. Seniors were learning to use computers. There was even a community kitchen where people shared leftover food. As I walked in, a little girl ran up. Are you Ava? Are you the one who makes this place have Friday breakfast? I smiled and bent down. No, you didn't do that. Everyone here did. You just opened the door. That evening, I stood on the balcony as usual. My phone vibrated slightly. It was a text message from Nathaniel. Great job in South Lawndale. You opened doors for so many people. Now you want to open doors for yourself? I know what you mean. And I'm in no hurry to answer. I need to be sure who am I when I stop fighting, and I need to learn to live a life not based on resistance, but based on inner freedom. Because after all, I'm no longer the waitress holding the tray of drinks by the pool. I am the one who writes it myself, the way out of the darkness. I never dreamed that one day I would be standing in the main hall of the Global Corporate Ethics Summit, hand-holding a name tag clearly printed, Ava Sinclair, Founding Director, Second Corridor. Just 3 months ago, I was considered a system disruptor. Now, I stand among hundreds of CEOs, corporate presidents, venture capitalists, and realize this is a bigger stage than the gala that day. There are no flashbulbs, no automated clapping. Here, every word is an investment. Every handshake is a commitment. Every nod can lead to millions, or kill an idea. And I was invited not just to speak, but to empower. My speech was brief. I didn't want to tell the swimming pool story again. People had heard it. They had come here for something else. Second Corridor has become the international standard model for whistleblower protection in nonprofit businesses. Organizations from the UK, Germany, Brazil, Japan. I want to copy it. After the presentation, I was pulled into a series of private meetings where I heard the same suggestion over and over again. We want to buy the rights to your program. We will invest $5 million for a 40% operating stake. She deserves global recognition, and her system needs real corporate structure. I'm not surprised. I've worked with investors before, or at least served them drinks. I know when they smile, they're counting profits. The meeting that made me hesitate the most was with Marielle Dupont, CEO of Helix Group, a global investment group with branches in more than 30 countries. Marielle didn't mince words. She pushed a folder toward me, along with a Mont Blanc pen. We bought all the rights to operate the model from you. In return, you will be the honorary president. You will no longer have to directly run it. You will become the global face of the program, with a personal financial package of up to $12 million US. I sat there, stunned. $12 million, a number that had never existed in my world. With that kind of money, I could buy a big house for my mother, send Lily to an Ivy League university, and even retire. But in return, I handed over his brainchild to an investment firm with a history of forcing employees to sign non-disclosure agreements. I looked up and asked, "What if I refuse?" Marielle smiled. "We'll buy another version. The idea is good, but the people are replaceable." That night, I sat alone in my hotel room, looking down on Chicago from the 57th floor. The twinkling lights were alluring. I thought of my mother, recovering, of Lily, applying to NYU, of myself, the Ava who had come from the bottom of the pool to here, and now must choose whether to sell what makes you alive. I called Nathaniel. He picked up on the first ring. "I got a buyout offer," I said. He was silent. "How much?" $12 million. "And what do you think?" I think I'm no longer in a position to just resist. I'm in a position to shape something, and I'm afraid I'll do it wrong." "Then don't do the right thing," he said. "Do the wrong thing." Right for me. The next morning, I walked into my meeting with Marielle. I put the contract she gave me yesterday on the table with a pair of scissors. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I will keep my program independent," I said, "and I will not sign anything that obscures the reason it was created." I cut the contract into 4, each stroke clean. "If this idea is as good as you say, it's strong enough not to be traded like a stock." Marielle smiled, cold as steel. "You just turned down the opportunity to become the most influential woman in global HR." I stood up. "I don't need influence. I need integrity." News of the rejection spread quickly. Some called me a fool. Some called me a hero. I didn't care. All I knew was, I still control my own story. At the Crow Foundation board meeting next week, Nathaniel announced that the Second Corridor program would expand to 12 more cities, but would remain a nonprofit, community-supervised program and not be affiliated with any investment group. I was appointed as National Executive Director, and for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of the seat of power, because I know I'm not sitting there to save my seat. I'm sitting there to open up seats for people who haven't been invited yet. That evening, when I returned to my apartment, I received a text message from an unknown number. I worked under Chelsea. You have no idea how many lives you saved. Thank you for not selling yourself out, so we don't feel like we all have a price." I put the phone down. For the first time in months, I turned on some music, not to forget, but to enjoy. I stood on the balcony, looking out at the city glowing like the first time Nathaniel had taken me to his private room after the pool that day. I'm not soaking wet anymore. I am no longer shaking. I rewrote the rules of the game, and this time, I am the pen holder. A year after the shocking gala night, I received an invitation to attend Chicago Youth Leadership Forum. The invitation clearly states, we would be honored if Ava Sinclair could deliver the inaugural address at Glass Mansion, where she courageously stood up to injustice and became an icon for a generation. It took me a moment to reread the last line. Glass Mansion, where I was pushed into the lake, where laughter tore my self-esteem to pieces, where it all began. I arrived early, not because I wanted to, but because I needed time to make peace with memory. The mansion had changed little. The white columns and neatly trimmed lawns were a reminder that everything here was ruthlessly controlled. But this time, I didn't enter through the side gate. I walked over the main gate, in a tailored black suit, a Crow Foundation badge pinned to his collar, and name tag, Ava Sinclair, Executive Director, Second Corridor. The person who received me was the new assistant of the organizing committee. The young girl was about 20, shy. Her hand holding the clipboard was shaking slightly. "Are you Ava Sinclair?" I nodded. She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "I wrote my college essay about you, about how you turned your humiliation into a voice. Thank you for not being silent." My throat choked, but I nodded. "What did you write in that essay?" She smiled, her cheeks flushing. I wrote, "A hero is not someone with superpowers, but someone who stands tall when the world tells them to bow down." I walked into the hall. Cello music was playing softly. Young faces, activists, social founders, teachers, nurses, all sat in a circle, waiting. I was introduced. I walked up to the stage, and then I saw the pool through the glass door, where I once emerged amidst laughter. I took a deep breath. "Hi everyone, my name is Ava. Some of you may know me from this article, that video, or what I've been saying on social media. But today, I'm not here to tell a sad story." I stopped. I came to talk about end, but not my end. It's the end of a way of life, where we believe that if we're good enough, quiet enough, patient enough, then everything will be okay. I saw a few people nodding. I used to believe that. I was the girl with the wine tray, weaving between silk dresses and tuxedos, hoping no one would see me. But then, when I was pushed into the lake, I realized I still exist, wet and shivering. And if I still exist, I still have the right to speak. I looked towards the lake. I don't tell you this to make you feel sorry for me. I tell you this to remind you that we all fall. Some of us get insulted. Some of us get rejected. Some of us get ignored. But what makes the difference is not that we fall, but that how we stand up. I pulled a piece of glass from my pocket, part of the broken cup that night. I kept it as a reminder. This was the sharpest thing I had ever held after that night, but I didn't use it for revenge. I used it to carve a line on my bedroom mirror. I am still me, whether others see it or not. I raised my head, the light shining on my cheek. You don't have to be famous. You just have to become the non-silent version of yourself. Whether you are a teacher, a cleaner, a caregiver, a salesperson, if you speak the truth, you have done more than this system has ever done. And then, I smiled softly. I was Cinderella. But no shoe ever fit me, because I wasn't made to fit any mold. I wasn't waiting for a prince. I'll put on your own shoes and walk out the door. The room fell silent. Then there was applause, not loud, not forced, just empathetic. After the lecture, I walked out into the back garden, which had once been a place of mocking laughter. Now it was quiet. I sat by the lake for the first time without feeling tight in my chest, and then a voice rang out from behind. "Do you have time?" I turned back. Logan Glass. He looked older, his hair graying at the temples, his suit dark, no longer had any of the arrogant luster of his past. I nodded, saying nothing. "You're amazing," he said, looking down at the lake. "I used to think I was invulnerable." I replied softly, "And I used to think I was invisible." He was silent for a moment. "I didn't come to apologize, because I don't think anything is enough to erase what I did." I looked at him. "Good, because I don't need an apology. I just need you. No." He nodded. "I know." I stood up and walked towards the door. As I left the garden, I did not look back. Not that I despise him, but because he is no longer part of the story I am living. A few weeks later, I returned to the office to find Lily waiting in the lobby. She hugged me and held out an envelope. "NYU accepted me," she exclaimed, "and I got a scholarship." I hugged her tight. My mom video called me that evening, the first time she had smiled brightly since her last surgery. She said, "Ava, I know you fought for me and Lily, but now, live for yourself." I nodded. That night, I stood on the top floor of Crow Tower, looking down at the city. No more feeling lost, no more need to prove anything. I opened my laptop and wrote the first lines of my book. Title: I am not a miracle, I am the consequence of broken silence. And I know this is the real beginning.